Hello, my name is Paul Desvetlicic, and today I will present you how to install dual stage CO2 regulator from Sparklabs into the I think it's Spetsnaz HK416, and that's it. Today we are gonna install an already built the HP engine, which is Wolf. It's a prototype engine from Sparklabs, and yeah, so that's it. Um, let's make just a quick explanation. Right here we have CO2 regulator inside the buffer tube, which is retained by the castle nut. The castle nut sits or faces this gas channel, and the gas channel is positioned onto the lower receiver. The gas, the gas exit from the CO2 regulator on this hose and then travels to the gas channel and exit this fitting. And to connect this fitting to the engine, we need to use pneumatic hose, which we will which we will um which will guide it through the back wall of the gearbox. Okay, so now let's get started. So I already took out the gearbox from the gun because this you have some other videos that can show you this procedure. I will just cover the installation of the CO2 regulator and what's connected with it. So right here we can see the fire control unit, trigger, engine itself, and right here this is pneumatic hose which we will guide through the back of the gearbox. And we shall proceed now with removal of all components. When removing the cables, be careful because not to damage them. And now we remove the fire control unit. And cables. And selector plate. Okay, so now that we have here empty shell, we can proceed to some marking which we are gonna use for cutting. Why we need to cut the gearbox? We need to channel this pneumatic hose through the back of the gearbox. The hose will come like this, so we need to make some cuttings right here. The reference for cuttings should be this hole right here, this one. So below the bottom of the hole you should mark about 1 to 2 millimeters. Just mark some line and mark it up to the end of the gearbox. I'm gonna use sticker marker here, so something like this. It doesn't have to be very accurate or precise as long as it's below this hole, because the pin goes through the lower receiver through this gearbox and we don't want it to damage the hose. And now we proceed with marking the bottom face of the groove. So the groove should be anything from, I don't know, 6 to 7 millimeters, something like this. It doesn't have to be very accurate. We are gonna mark this is what all we have to remove. And how deep we are gonna remove it? Well, we are gonna remove it down to the bottom face of the gearbox, like this. This what I marked right here, we will have to cut it out like this. Okay, so for the cutting, either you can use a file, you can use the metal saw, you can use a grinding machine, or either you can use the milling machine if you have one. So now use any tools you want to proceed to the cutting. So now I'll proceed to the cutting. I choose to use the most painful method. It's the file method. So I'm gonna use my file, which is it's a quite good quality file, and I'm gonna grind this window out of the gearbox. So we shall start. And put the engine inside and see where we are. Okay, so yeah, I think we are mostly done. Just a little bit chamfering to remove some sharp corners is needed, and I think that's it. So we are done. Now that we made the cutting, we need to clean everything. I'm gonna use compressed air. You can use really anything, but I have compressed air, so I'm gonna use compressed air. So I'm gonna clean the top. Okay, and now clean we want to clean the whole gearbox, so there is no chips left in the corners. Let's see, you can see right here there are some chips left. So you want to be extremely careful about the chips, so remove and clean the gearbox properly. Some chips will accumulate on some greased areas, they will stick to it and it might not be okay, and if some chips fall off, it might damage the fire control unit. Now that we prepared the left side of the shell, we also should prepare the right side of the shell. So we put them together, we take a look at the hole that we made, and what we do next is we are gonna mark the right side at the same spot that we cut the groove with the marker, and it will be about 3 millimeters deep. It doesn't have to be as wide as this one. This one also doesn't have to be this wide. only so you can put your pneumatic hose through the middle of the gearbox shells. And yeah, that's it. So let's proceed to the cutting. Okay, so I done now the cutting, and this is should look like this, something like this. uh, and now we can proceed with the next stage. Now we can proceed to the modification of the lower receiver. I already did modification, and this is the result. Before I start the modification, I need to warn you about something. You need, if you're gonna use the sling mount or this sling spacer, uh, you should take its thickness into consideration. Because why we do this? We need to have this guide stick out of the back face in order to have good positioning of the gas channel. And if we cut it to the lower receiver and 3 millimeters from the lower receiver like I did, we can use only gas channel directly on the lower receiver. However, if you want to use the sling mount or this sling spacer, you'll need to place the sling spacer on the lower receiver and cut the guide 3 millimeters from the sling mount. So this one in my case it's too short, and it should stick 3 millimeters out more if I wanted to use the sling mount. So even if you don't use sling mount, it might be a good idea to use this sling spacer to accommodate the difference, which is 3 millimeters thick. And if you choose to use the sling mount later on, you can just take the sling spacer out and use the sling mount, and it will fit together without any additional modifications. If you're gonna use the sling mount, you need to make sure that there is the hole in the sling mount. In this one it's not, so you should make the hole so the gas channel is gonna sit on the sling mount perfectly faced like this. And so that's it for the lower gearbox modification. And see, next thing is assembly. So now we proceed with the assembly procedure. I already assembled all the components into gearbox. The only two things that are left are the hose and the spring guide or buffer tube nut, however you want to call it. You can either use the one that came with your engine, or you can use original, which you're gonna cut. Before you use the before you use any of this, you need to check that that they go without any problems onto the regulator. So this one's good, goes on smoothly. This one also goes smoothly on without any problems. So either we can use the both ones. I decided to use this one because I'm too lazy to cut this one. And so let's proceed with the assembly. So now we assemble the gearbox. We can see the pneumatic hose exit in the middle, which is okay. Trigger works. I check the working, if engine works, and it works. So everything is ready, and now we are gonna put it in the lowers. So now we assembled everything together, together with hand grip. one suggestion is not to put this magazine release in, because if you put it in you will have extra work. Disassembling everything is something isn't working properly. And now we can proceed to the installation of CO2 regulator. Okay, so now what we do, we use some wooden block or anything soft or something. It's fine as long as it's about half of the lower receiver, something like this. You can, it's not really necessary, but it's much easier and you can do a job more accurately. So first thing we do, we cut the pneumatic hose at angle about 45 degrees. Okay, approximately 45 degrees. Okay, so why 45 degrees? In case that we touch with the hose to the back of this gas channel, and if the hose is straight cut, then the gas won't be able to come into the hose. So this is why 45 degrees cut, so the gas can easily get into this HP engine. Next thing we do is put on the gas channel like this, and now it doesn't go any further. So now what we do, we measure the gap between the lower receiver and the gas channel. Okay, about 11 millimeters, and we use this measurement to further cut the gas tube, sorry, pneumatic tube. So somewhere like this, or if I tilt it like this, and 45-degree angle, right about there. So we have cut now our tube to the final dimension. Now we recheck this by using the gas channel, and it sits perfectly on the lower receiver. Remember, if you're gonna use sling mounts or sling spacer, you need to take this into account. So you put the sling spacer between it, and then you put the gas channel on it, on the pneumatic tube, and then you measure the distance between the spacer or the sling mount and the gas channel. And this is why, so when you use the sling, you will have properly seated the gas channel. So this is our result. Like this. Okay. So the next thing, we take the buffer tube and we unscrew this retaining screw just a little bit. And next thing, we have to align the adjustment hole with this adjustment screw. And when this is done, we use the Allen key to make sure that we have some that the regulator is open, so just turn it a little bit counterclockwise. Okay, so the next thing we take the CO2 cartridge. We need to empty if it's full. We need to empty it right now, or we can use the empty one from the start. So right now we're gonna empty this. Okay, so now we tighten it to the end. So now that we have emptied the CO2 cartridge and tightened the buffer tube to the end, we can proceed with the installing. So now we take the regulator and castle nut. We screw the castle nut on, and then we use some flat object and lean it on the buffer tube, and then we unscrew the castle nut and we align them together. And now that they are aligned, we'll make additional quarter of the turn on the castle nut, so 90 degrees, just like this. And now when we have this in place, we mark the orientation. So we use marker and make some orientation like this. Next thing we do is take the gas chamber, the gas channel, and now we use twisting motion and we push it on like this. And for the next one we can press the buffer tube on and continue with the twisting motion from the regulator back. And before you do that, make sure that your retaining screw is not tight, so the regulator can turn. Now we turn it and push it forward, and when you can see that it won't move anymore forward, it's in front position, this is its final position. So the next thing we do is unscrew the castle nut and we check if there is a gap between the castle nut and buffer tube, and in this one there is a gap, so everything's okay. We screw it back on like this, and now we can proceed to installation to the lower receiver. We take our lower receiver and together slowly put in the pneumatic tube, and when you can feel that the screw hit the buffer tube nut inside, you start twisting the regulator like this. So now the regulator is rotating and it's screwing inside the screw which is inside the gearbox. Again, before you tighten it, make sure that you have orientation of the castle nut correct. What's important is there is a gap between them, so this is 0, so like this. We tighten them together. Now recheck that there is still gap inside between the buffer tube and the gas channel. Yes, there is. And now what you do next is unscrew the regulator until you align this adjustment hole with the adjustment screw. So you start unscrewing, and there you go, it's aligned. So that's it. The next thing you do is take your castle nut wrench and tighten the castle nut. I honestly don't have one. I should buy it by now, but I use some other tools. You use the castle nut wrench so to properly tighten it. So now that we've tightened the castle nut and we have the hole aligned with screw, we can screw the retention screw. You can screw it even before you start tightening the buffer tub nut, like this. So guys, that's it for the installation procedure of dual stage regulator from Sparklabs. Right now the next thing would be to adjust it. So let's proceed to the adjustment procedure. So how do we adjust the regulator? It's really simple. We have only one adjustment screw. The easiest way is to use Allen key and tighten it all the way in until you feel it stops. So you can feel the tension and don't push it further. So just it is softly, it will screw in softly and then you will suddenly feel that it stopped. So now the regulator is at the lowest pressure. If you unscrew this, it will get higher. Now you can use a new CO2 cartridge and puncture the cartridge, and when the cartridge is punctured and whole gun is assembled, you can use the Allen screw and start with untighten it this screw until you get to your desired velocity, FPS or energy, whatever it is. So when you are there, you can adjust the pressure, and that's it. That's all for the installation of this double stage CO2 regulator. So thank you for listening and see you next time. Bye.